Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am Mr. East Forest, and I'm back. I'm back from the trip to Costa Rica. I actually got on one of these things called an airplane. It had been a long time, and I made it through. So I'm on the other side, and I want to say thank you to everyone at the Breathe Balance Gathering Festival that we were at, Rada and I. And for Aubrey Marcus, his Fit for Service program was sort of the inspiration for this. And of course, Justin Wren and Fight for the Forgotten, because that's what we were doing the benefit concert for. If you haven't heard the Justin Wren episode, look back a few episodes. It's a great one, as they all are. And it was really cool because Justin and we got to talk on the podcast, and we've chatted on the phone, texting and stuff, but we'd never really gotten any FaceTime. And boy, what a joy it is to get to see somebody in real life. Imagine that after all this time. So it was a trip. It was a trip to go down there and experience 90, 95 degree temperatures, just feeling like heat every day all of a sudden. I mean, it was hot all the time. Even at night, it was probably in the 80s. And that's wild. Wasn't used to that. But it was great to see the ocean. That's been a super long time. And I was in Costa Rica one other time, like 15 years ago. Actually, like when I first went to Costa Rica, I got some of the very first field recordings that I ever did. And some of those field recordings ended up on the Education of the Individual Soul album, like some sounds of the rainforest and some jungles, the volcano Arenal rumbling, all sorts of insects, of course, water, ocean. And that was it's probably 2008, I'm guessing, is when we went, my former partner, Karina, and I. And yeah, so it was just kind of cool, like having that, when I was hearing the sounds there, it just made me think of that. And here we are all these years later, and I have some new music coming out. The new song Possible, which is the title track off my new studio album, is now finally released. I will play it at the end, and if you want to hear it in better resolution or in full or just to support the project, you can do that wherever you listen to music. We also have a pre-order now going for the vinyl. The vinyl will not ship until mid-July, most likely. But if you want to get your dibs on one of those, there really is beautiful iridescent color vinyl, and the artwork has this kind of iridescence and blue to it. So yeah, that's available now. And I'll put a link in the show notes down there if you want to stream the song on your favorite streaming platform. Please feel free to do that. This week, I have a conversation with Michael Phillips. And Michael has his own amazing podcast called Third Eye Drops, which I was also on. And if you like this podcast, you'd probably like his podcast. But he's got a great mind and a generous heart, and we get into all sorts of like fun corners of intellectual explorations, and I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And like I said, check out his podcast, also in the show notes down there, if you want to see what he's up to, because he's got lots and lots of really cool guests. And thanks for subscribing to this podcast, for giving it a review. 5 stars is easy to do. You can do it, I believe, more than once, and you can always give a written review, and we really appreciate everyone who takes the time to do that on Apple Podcasts. And of course, when you share the podcast with your friends or on social media, and you can always say hi at team@eastforest.org. Couple other points of business. Just want to let you know, if you didn't hear, we had to postpone, or I should say cancel, the Salt Lake City May 1st show. That is because the venue has been taken over for mass vaccination sites. So they kicked us out yet again, which is pretty heartbreaking. And we've refunded ticket holders, and essentially those people will get first dibs when we reschedule the date at a new venue when we do find one. We're not sure when that will be, but we will let you know, of course. And as for the other dates that we're working on putting together, we're still working on those. I'm sure you can imagine it's a bit of a challenging process in these times, but they may be in the fall. We're looking at the summer too, but bottom line is we're working on it. Adam's working hard on it in the background. And so if you have pledged to just go to one of those shows on Light through my website, eastforest.org/tour, thank you. Thank you for that support. And anyone else can do that too. There's not really a financial commitment to do that. It's just saying you're interested. And then when it's ticketed and there's a venue, you can decide at that point if you want to go ahead and buy the ticket or not. So check that out. And lastly, thanks again to everyone who's signed up for the Patreon, patreon.com/eastforest. That is the East Forest Council. And you can join that at anything from $4 a month and up. And it's a way of supporting this podcast that is more or less, well, it's free. I guess, you know, I promote East Forest stuff on here, but it's a labor of love on my part. I love diving into these conversations, but of course it does take, I'd say about 4 or 5 hours an episode in total. And that's by joining the Patreon, the East Forest Council. That's a way to support this podcast. And I offer things like podcast extras and unreleased music, advanced releases, live streams. We do a monthly Zoom council at a particular tier, so we can do some one-on-one work and other things that I'm thinking about. It's just a way to have community, witness one another, dive in a little deeper, and a way for you, if you wish, to support directly the East Forest project. So thank you so much for checking that out. eastforest.org or patreon.com/eastforest. And lastly, April 23rd through 26th, I will be at the Esalen Institute. Also with Rada will be there as well, as along with Paul Stamets and James Fadiman and many other wonderful people, some of them coming virtually because they're not able to come physically, for something called the Enthea Wheel. It is a conference that will be all about the science and ceremony of psilocybin, this particular conference, and I will be doing a live-streamed ceremony concert that you can participate in watching, or you could, there's a few spots if you would like to come to this entire weekend retreat thing, and they're making a online course out of this that you could also participate in. So there's lots of avenues in there. Probably the easiest thing, if you want to learn more, is just go to eastforest.org, hit that tour tab, and scroll down. You'll see the event, and you can click on the thing for more info. So I'm happy to be getting back there, and I'm just surprised I'm going somewhere else this month because, you know, it's been one of those years. But I hope you guys are hanging in there, and let's just dive into this conversation with our dear friend, Michael Phillips.
I know the benefits of extreme temperatures on both ends are myriad, and I'm very into the idea of starting a heat exposure practice, but I find myself struggling with that more than cold for some reason. Like, it's just...
really?
Because the amount of time, because really to reap, I think, the full benefits of a sauna, you got to go quite a while, like 20, 30 plus minutes, right?
I've heard that. I mean, I tend to just kind of go in, get it as hot as I can, and then I do like cold dunks outside, and not for like extreme amounts of time. Just go out, jump in the icy water for a while, and then I rest, and then kind of do 2 or 3 or 4 of those cycles. And that's kind of the Russian banya style. I spent some time there in grad school, and I just got that hammered into me that although they beat each other with
those
birch or spruce, or if you're really hardcore, pine.
Yeah,
you soak it in cold water and you hit your buddy, you know.
Right.
And not at all homoerotic.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and it's this dovetails into one of my bigger fascinations, which is the almost magical array of awards that seem to come when you expose yourself to acute stressors. You know, whether it's cold, whether it's heat, whether it's long distance running, there are all of these built-in rewards that you get, these hormetic rewards, you know, neurotransmitters, subjective feelings of, alleviation of depression, just so many different things to a level where it almost sounds like it can't be real. But if you look at the actual, this is like well researched at this point. It's good for everything. Basically, all cause mortality goes down significantly if you work a cold or a heat or both practices into your life. It's incredible.
Yeah, I've heard that, and that's one of the reasons I leaned into it. I just frankly enjoy the de-stressing. It really helps me clear my head. And there's nothing like just getting your body immersed in water, period, clears your head. Just taking a shower clears your head. But even when I sometimes would swim, and I always noticed that really like. So when you added in the whole sauna element, and I had a electric sauna for a while, but I feel like there's nothing cleaner than just I like the ritual aspect. Like you have to build the fire and you have to tend the fire, and then I'm pouring water on rocks on it to create the steam. And and you have to chop wood. I have to carry water to fill the buckets. I mean, how much more straight ahead spiritual path can it be than having to chop wood and carry water literally as part of this? So I like that ritual a lot. And
absolutely.
So I've built a couple saunas and I've got it down to where it's not that expensive, relatively speaking, and they're very efficient. And you buy the stove on Craigslist or something, like an old cast iron stove, and that thing gets hot in like 15 minutes. I get up to 160, 165, and that's plenty hot for me to just sweat.
I'm sensing a folly-filled YouTube video where I try to follow the East Forest sauna recipe and I just fail miserably and look like a dolt. Because as much as I love the satisfaction of building something, there's just part of me that's like, I don't think that would go well if I tried to do it. I don't think it would go super well.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward, but I don't know. Someone once told me when I was worked in construction for a couple years, and he says, all construction is fixing problems. You're always, oh, wait, that doesn't fit right. How do we do this? Or like, okay, that's not going to be what we thought. How am I going to get this window in? And that's all you're doing, which is part of the satisfaction of it.
Yeah.
But it inevitably never goes
right
as you think it would. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing about it that's just so magical. I mean, I don't use that word lightly because I don't like to defer to language that's really obtuse and doesn't really say
magical
precisely what anything. You're trying to say. but this is why I say magical, because everybody's always, preaching about the benefits of mindfulness, preaching about the importance of taking time to do inner work. And a lot of times these conversations devolve into total new age claptrap because it's just like people start using buzzwords and it's soon you don't know what the substance is, if any. But if you take a frigid shower, if you take an ice bath, rumination ends. You are in the, like, there is no, you want mindfulness? How about a million ice cubes, like, pinging all of your pain receptors at once? And the only way you survive that is, like, you don't have a choice but to be mindful, or you just fully panic. So that's what's so incredible about it, is if you have trouble sitting still, if you have trouble, even doing a 10-minute meditation, if you can get yourself in a really cold shower or an ice bath, you are in the moment viscerally and completely. So that's so good for me, because I like, I'm sure many people listening, am definitely prone to ruminatory feedback loops, and that always snaps me right out of it.
They are presencing activities. They're the kryptonite of screens.
Yes.
I've done a couple podcasts in the sauna, and I find them to be relatively interesting. But let's parlay this into your world. So you have this world of the Third Eye Drops podcasts, and I don't even know actually what else is in your world as an individual. Maybe you could fill us in, but what would you say is a core commonality of that community? Does it have something to do with a yearning for presencing, or finding a map through this weird psychotechnic world that we're in? Because I feel like that's something over here in the East Forest world, is all of us trying to figure out just how to live authentically in the absurdity and the chaos and the pain and the grief and the joy and the wonder and all the things.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a few core concepts, and I used to really kind of shy away from putting myself into any particular camp or philosophy. But over the years and over the course of writing like 80-90% of a book now, I feel like I've constructed some language that I feel comfortable wrapping around it. And a couple of words that I always semi tongue-in-cheekly use, but also are starting to get some sinew, are the techno-dharma and technodelic. And I feel like you just did, connecting technology and meaning seems to be one of the core struggles of being alive right now, because information, when you digitize it, you inherently make it disposable, right? Like if you have one of something and you value that thing, that's a valuable thing. But if you have infinite amounts of something, you got to do some work to see the meaning there. You like my Spotify music queue, man. I have no idea, or saved songs. No idea how many artists are in there. A song comes on, I'm like, oh, I love this song. Unfortunately, half the time I probably can't name the artist. This is the situation we've found ourselves in. But that said, I think there still is a way to look at the larger gestalt of this technodelic situation we're in and imbue it with some kind of meaning. So that's a core struggle. That's a core question I'm always trying to think about, because clearly, the McKennian novelty spikes aren't going to end anytime soon, man. They're going to keep getting weirder. We're going to keep metabolizing information faster and faster and faster. And that's not going to stop. So how do you ground within that? How do you still find meaning within that? How do you take time for the sacred within that? Maybe even how do you transmute that into something sacred? Like these are all core questions that I'm really concerned with. But there's more.
There's a democratization of the digital when you digitize something, and not only is it infinite, but the copies of it are exact in a sense. There's no degradation. Like you make a vinyl record from a mother or a father, or however it works, and you can only make so many with that, right? So many children, and there's a very analog, natural process to that. Like there's death involved, and everything in our world is that way except for money right now, which grows. It doesn't decay, really. And so,
well,
it depends how you...
Inflation.
Yeah, but sort of the way we've based the economy on a debt-based economy is that, money sort of begets money. It can just grow if you let it essentially not really do anything. I mean, yes, it's technically doing something in these mechanics of investments. But my point being, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to the fact that it's like, well, we've broken down these walls where now we can reach people with these copies of things, and musicians can now, they don't need the gatekeepers in quite the same way. But then on the other side of the coin, there's a sea of information and the information sickness that we all have to deal with. And maybe it's really just about people trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah.
Like how do we, because there's a lot of good information out there too. And there's a lot of good music out there, for instance, or podcasts. Take your pick. On one hand, there's so many podcasts. On the other hand, there's also a lot of good ones. So the calling seems to be, how do you navigate it?
Yeah, the problem doesn't seem to be a problem of information as much as it is a problem of orientation, a problem of contextualization. It's not the fact that we need more ideas. It's that we probably need fewer, honestly, and we probably need ones that are more aimed at directing us inward and getting us to the place where we do the thing that the contextualization happens. And, you know, for you, the contextualization and orientation is music. You know, that's the way that you figured out how to bridge this invisible gap between the meaning and the meaninglessness, where inherently plinking on the computer and clicking on the mouse and playing the keyboard, you know, all of these things in and of themselves, they're nothing sacred, right? Yet for you and for so many people that listen to your music, it all comes together into something they would feel comfortable calling sacred. But within that, there is no one piece of technicality that makes it sacred. You know what I'm saying? And that, I guess that is, if you ask me to give a nutshell of what my core preoccupation is that, like, how do you find a soul building way of living that makes you feel meaningful, that makes meaning for you? And I just ass backwards stumbled into my version of that being podcasting. And the way that I knew that's what it was is I left conversations feeling charged. You know, I left our conversation, for instance, a few weeks ago feeling charged. And that is something that is intangible, yet very palpably, subjectively real. And I think that's what we're all missing. You know, like when do we go outside the lines, right? When do we go outside the lines of the obligations, the things we have to do, the expectations, the name, the family, the job title, the degree, to touch that thing, to even try to touch that thing? And that's what I've always been preoccupied with for my entire life, because I look back on all of these sort of signal moments of childhood, like these little snapshots of like feeling terrifically confused, you know, just being in a church and being like, why? Like, why? I don't get it. I don't get why all these people are saying this. And I don't feel like if I was saying it too, I'd be feeling it, you know, like same thing in school, same thing in pretty much every job I've had. So that's it, man.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin. So not super small town, but like 70,000 people.
Yeah.
Small enough that I wanted to get the fuck out, for sure.
Yeah, my town was Salem, Oregon. I think at the time it was probably 100,000. That's always a tough size, because it's like not really, it doesn't have as much of a sense of a center sometimes, or personality, at least is what I found. And there's like a malaise to growing up, at least maybe we had some similarities in that, where it's just you're like, definitely a lot of those why questions. Yes. And also it just feels like nothing is real, but everyone's assuming it's all real. And I don't really see a pathway out. I didn't have a lot of guidance or people to look at and say, oh, there it is. There's the path. Everyone was just sort of satisfied with going to Costco and, you know, with the movie plex on the weekends. And
Same.
But there must have been some milestones in your path that you say as you stumbled into this discovery. I think looking back, though, can you connect some dots on some particular choices perhaps you did make knowingly or unknowingly that led to the place you're at now?
Yes and no. Yes and no. What comes to mind for me, that adolescent smallish town malaise, is one of the biggest influences on my thinking in the last year or so has been this psychologist named James Hillman. I may have brought him up during our pod. But, you know, everything that I've said, with the exception of some of my weird linguistic choices like technodelic and technodharma, could have easily come out of James Hillman's mouth. But he has a great book called Soul's Code, where he just, with beautiful precision and an absolute glut of examples, goes over all of these people who were, you know, high achieving artists or performers that all had very troubled childhoods. And, you know, some cases like Pulitzer Prize winning writers who like flunked out of school or like left school or whatever. And I count myself, minus the achievements, I count myself in those ranks of people who are just like, why in the fuck am I doing the things that I'm doing? And was truly feeling like I had my soul in a vice for the vast majority of my childhood and my school years. But in terms of things that really started to make sense, I truly can't reduce it back to a moment other than that intuitive felt sense of yearning for something else. And when I got older, definitely books and ideas and people started to come into my head that made me feel like, okay, this is something, and wanting to follow up on that and wanting to follow up on that. And then eventually, the discipline of podcasting started growing a little bit. And, you started hearing these long form, rambling, but heartfelt and philosophical pods by people like Duncan Trussell. And like, I remember living in Japan. I taught English there for a year, and someone goes, dude, you got to listen to this podcast by these guys named Duncan Trussell and Joe Rogan. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this was like 10 years ago now.
Right.
And just hearing it. And that was a moment. That was a moment where I'm like, this is a thing you can do? Like, I could just do this right now? And I was kind of obsessed with rationalizing why I would be worthy to get behind a microphone and blast ideas for the next year or so until I actually started doing it in its original weird form. And it just kind of continued to snowball from there.
Yeah, I mean, these days, it's like, who doesn't have a podcast?
Yeah.
And it's strange that the marketplace is encouraging everyone to have one in a way, which I'm not sure what their thought process is there on the business model, but it's like they want everyone. It's like, it's so easy, it's free, just do it on your phone, and now you have a podcast. And maybe they're thinking of that will help create a stronger marketplace of ideas. I don't know, but there's a lot of options out there. And Duncan,
God, so
I was just talking to Duncan the other day because we reconnected on his podcast, and he's someone that's still not doing like video casting, and it's pretty simple. It's still pretty old school, and I like that. I appreciate that he's not being like, oh, I have this pressure, like I have to do that thing and this thing. Is like, I just do what I like to do, and it's just basically a conversation, and it's real open-ended, and that's that.
And it's successful, so why change it? Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why continue to? Yeah.
And it's very him, and I think that's important. Is that it? If anything, if I think about the commonalities, what people in my ecosystem, in the world that I'm a part of, I feel like there's something there about us yearning for an authenticity.
Oh yeah.
And like we're all looking for our own authenticity and how to express that into the world. And I also think there's a hunger to receive that back from the world and from individuals. And there's not an easy answer to say, you read this book or you take this vitamin and then the authenticity comes. It's an art, really, to express that form of who you are through your body language and your voice and your words and everything. And it's something you're constantly playing with. Like we do this all the time naturally when we're talking to people, our loved ones, friends, and people we don't know. And we put on different hats and faces when we do it. But that seems to be something that it's part of this techno dharma, this techno future that we're in, is that we hunger for more authenticity, perhaps because we're lacking those face-to-face interactions as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's to me, that's one of the most cryptic yet powerful human qualities, that infectious vibration that comes off of someone when you can tell whatever they're saying or whatever they're doing, there is tremendous thought and care coming off of it. Yet when people are really adept at it, it seems kind of effortless, And I think when you mix all of those together and alchemize all of those together and expose them to the heat of enough time and doing, that might become something close to a recipe for authenticity.
Well, it sounds like practice, right? And in some
Yeah.
level, it's getting used to that inner critic and that imposter feeling, and just sort of like working with it and being used to. It's just like running or something. It's like, well, now I know. I just know what it feels like to run 10 miles, and I'm used to the pain. I'm used to what walls come up, and I have some muscles to work through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always there's that quality of efficiency, when somebody who's great, to me, like I play guitar, I played in bands, and I'm okay. Like I can do my thing. But when you see someone who's like, a really technical guitar shredder or piano shredder, and they just have that economy, they like just can sweep pick and play an arpeggio, and they're just like, ooh, like what's more real than that? There's reps behind that. Like there's undeniable thousands of reps behind that. And and when it comes to matters of the psyche and psychology and philosophy, it's not as transparent as that, but it's still true. Like you hear someone sharing ideas they're excited about and that they have a lot of fluency in, and that's exciting to people like you and me. Like that's infectious.
They've done the reps.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, and they want, and I also like too when they share those ideas in a real like Greek dialogos sense. Like I'm not trying to tell you my ideas to change your mind. I'm putting them out there so we can play with them and improve them together through this dialogue, through you and me interlocuting, like they would have back in that time when they were just excited about ideas, when they were just, sure, arguing for whatever they believed, but they were ready to go back to the psychological drawing board and try to figure out, like, did this person just introduce something new that I need to implement in my own philosophy? And I think that's such a human desire, and it fell out of favor from what I've read in academic psychology or academic philosophy, because you can't prove anything with it. You can't write it down in like a sentential logic form and say, look, I logically proved this thing. But to me, that kind of philosophy is so fucking boring, man. Like I want the philosophy that I feel. I want the philosophy that subjectively changes my life, that energizes other people and excites other people, that makes them want to be on their own, sort of individual soul building quest, as cheesy as that sounds. Because if we're not doing that, like what are we doing? What are we after with I mean, even selfishly for me, like I said, I leave these conversations feeling charged up. So if that's not what we're doing, what are we doing?
There's only one game in town, and anytime we try to put our finger in or on something or put it into a concise box, it feels like on some level we're missing the point, because at the end of the day, it's the mystery. And that's why I love art or music or any other kind of art, because it's dancing around that mystery. It is the mystery, like saying, this is a representation, it's metaphor. And that's the only way really to speak matters of the spirit, because we have to be able to break out of the confines of the literalism of 3D reality. In a sense, we have to represent it and create the metaphor for us to be able to stay in touch with that which is larger than just our mind. That's why being in nature can be so grounding, or listening to inspiring conversations, because it's painting like a larger picture that somehow transcends something smaller. And when we started this conversation, you were talking about a lot of times in New Age circles or self-help circles that languages started to be used sometimes in a way where perhaps in a sense it's being non-literal, but in that it's actually quite pointed and literal in its smallness. It's sort of saying, I'm going to throw out a word that could mean a lot of things,
Yeah.
but I'm actually using that to put something in a box. Does
A
that make
word,
sense?
a word like third eye, for example. I have a love-hate relationship with the name of my own fucking podcast because it is supposed to be kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of like those other words that I mentioned earlier, but it at the same time does have something to do with what I'm talking about. Yet I would not at all feel comfortable putting that concept in any kind of easy to swallow box. Like the YouTube videos are like 5 reasons you should never open your third eye, and then you like watch it and you're like, I don't understand what that video is even about. Like that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on some level, we need to have the ability to speak in broad terms, but we do seem to be going through in this past year with the social justice movement, racial justice. Like all of a sudden, it was like, no, you can't just say some of these things, whether they're quote unquote have larger truths, because it's like we're owning language in different ways.
Yeah.
And I think we're sort of also recognizing how you can weaponize language and how, by saying things like Trump would say, I don't know if it's true, but blank, blank, blank. It's like, but we know what's going on there. It's like you're sowing dissent. You're planting seeds by actually not being specific in a way. So there is some kind of calling for us right now about specificity or saying I don't know. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is, but we're in the middle of some like shift in what's being asked of us with language and ideas.
Yeah, because we're inherently talking about something that you can't know. And I think that desire for certainty really does undermine true, meaningful exploration. Because I do not think certainty in a metaphysical sense exists. I don't think you can be certain of what happens when you die. I don't think you can be certain about if there's even a larger meaning to life. I'm very sympathetic to the idea that there is. I'm very open to the idea that there is, but I don't know. I don't know if any of the psychedelic trips I've had, any of the intuitions I have, any of the philosophies I've read, I don't know if they're representing something true or if they're just playing with bits of matter. I think they are. I think there's probably more for a multitude of reasons, but I don't know. And I think in that not knowing and saying, not even just saying I don't know in these big senses. I think saying I don't know in a mundane sense is important too. And I think that again circles back into authenticity. Like it seems like a very disarming human moment, when someone says, I don't know. I truly don't know, but let's talk about it. Let's suss it out. Let's play with it. And I think a lot of times just by doing that, just by engaging in that play and engaging in that exploration and getting your hands on it, you're growing. So there's another Greek word that I really love, and it's anagage. And anagage is this idea that of climbing or of ascent of the psyche, of the spirit, of the soul, of the mind. And the most famous example is Plato's cave and also the Matrix, that somebody is essentially, it's the Gnostic myth. You're captured, or you're somehow find yourself in a false or limited kind of reality, but you escape that and climb toward the light. But if you, in the allegory of Plato's cave, let's say, you get out of the cave, you're not in full reality. You've made some kind of progress where you see the sun. Wow, what a revelation. But are you do you know everything now? Like, do you understand all of the secrets of the universe? No, it's like now you continue and you continue and you continue and you continue until you die. And to me, there's this tremendous honesty and there's this tremendous gravity in just being on that kind of romantic, admittedly, maybe it's a hamster wheel, but there is something romantic about being like, I'm going to at least try. I don't know, but I'm gonna at least try. And to me, that's the most authentic way that I've found to be, you know?
Well, there's something about feeling too versus just thinking, and in a sense, like you're feeling your way through the journey and the validity of that. It doesn't always have to be like an amalgamation of ideas or a destination of theses. It's like there's maybe that's something that I've been discovering in my own process of just the validity of recognizing how I'm feeling my way through things maybe is enough, as opposed to figuring it out.
Yeah.
Or having an approach, or I don't know, whatever it is. My mind always wants to do that. Okay, it's this or it's that, or I'm in or I'm out. It's a yes, it's a no. But what's my body saying? And maybe that is all. Maybe that was the point. Was some sort of felt experience. But frankly, is there anything else? You know, have psychedelics, I'm assuming, played a role in the evolution of your path, and were they more about a felt experience in itself that was powerful, or was it more about some sort of specific revelation, how that translated into your life?
Yeah, they for sure have been. They absolutely have been, particularly the few heroic level experiences that I've had that just completely really drive home the idea of how strange reality, or consciousness at least, can be. You know, that has a way of reinforcing and buttressing how truly incredible consensus reality and daily life are, and how special they are. That they, like, do you know Ralph Abraham, who he was part of those trialogues with Terence McKenna and Rupert Sheldrake back in the day.
He was the third guy.
Yeah. But he was this brilliant mathematician, man. Like he did founding work on like chaos theory, and was like a tenured professor by the time he was like 12, not 12, but like in his 20s,
13.
You know? Yeah. And he said something to the effect of, and keep in mind, this is coming from a great mathematician who deeply understands chaos, said, "I'm troubled by the level to which it all hangs together." He said something like that, and that always sticks with me, and that seems to be the primary takeaway. I wouldn't say I'm troubled, I would say I'm relieved on the other end of those experiences, because I think you sometimes need to go out into the psychic wilderness where there's nothing familiar and everything's topsy-turvy, and thoughts might become words without you signing off on it, or you're just flailing glossolalia or whatever throughout the trip. But I always come back like a whoo, thank God kind of a feeling on the other end of those trips. And to me, that is hugely instructive. And it's always a reminder that whenever I go into those spaces, I get something, but it's not what I expect. And that something is a kind of deeper appreciation for what we would typically call mundane life, stable life.
Yes. Yeah, I do too. I feel very, as I've gotten older, psychedelic experiences have made me more grateful for the nothingness. The equilibrium of consciousness, like the ability to just sit and it's nothing, and it's calm and it's just there. I'm like, wow, what a gift is that? That's what I want to cultivate, because that's really pleasurable, to not be in a storm, or a really intense experience. It's like, it's similar to like recognizing how the health is your main thing. Like if you don't have your health, it gets real tough to be present, or I should say it gets real tough to deal with anything else when you're in pain or sickness. And psychedelics can show you so many things and give you so many experiences, but they can also make you really grateful for just this, like the isness.
Yeah. And I think if you can sit in that, that's a pretty big feather in your cap, man. If you can, so the last chapter of my book actually is going to be called something like The Marriage of the Mystery and the Mundane. And it's about the idea of, can you implement that sense of wonder into your daily life in real time, where you're so mindful of the insane amount of circumstances that must be occurring at all times for Earth not to spin out of its orbit, for you not to drop dead, for the car not to whip around the corner and hit you. Like, can you actually walk through life with a felt sense? Like, there's no pretending this. There's no like, I could tell you that I'm in this state and it would be a completely self-defeating exercise to tell you that I'm there. But if you can actually be there, that's incredible. I mean, that is the closest thing probably to a kind of enlightenment, which is a word I don't really enjoy, but
I like kind of enlightenment. That's a better way of it. It's kind of enlightenment, and that's that's good enough.
What you were saying before about wanting your mind wanting to have answers and be sure and have a concept that you can hang on to. I think that in and of itself is a big lesson, because that's the sort of I'm going to try to remember the actual Buddhist terminology, but there's an idea of a reality is kind of has two parts. I can't remember the actual Sanskrit words now, but there's small dualistic reality, and then there's larger reality. And it's not that one is not true and the other is true. It's a both and. So, in the larger reality, this is where we're all one. This is prajna paramita, perfect knowledge, perfect wisdom, feeling like you're connected to the entire web and consciousness of being and all of these things. But then there's also the small reality where you have to go potty and you have to like feed yourself, and you have to, have concepts like hot and cold, because if I go this high, I burn. And if I go that low, I get cold. It's like, it's not that one is real and one isn't real. It's that our mind, the human mind, is this strange threshold object where there's like this weird Venn diagram thing going on where we have an intuitive awareness of the former, of the larger reality, but we have a daily experience of the duality based reality. And we're constantly trying to, if you're on any kind of soul making, purpose finding, meaning making quest, you're trying to balance those two things. And I think psychedelics come back into that too, because I think that they can push you further into that, what could perhaps be an ultimate reality, or closer to that ultimate reality. Because the dualistic concepts definitely become a lot flimsier, right? It's like you think it's sort of, I feel like I have memories of a lot of times where it's like, you think it's this, but could it really be this? And then all of your concepts start to melt away, and a lot of veils between senses. I think we were talking about synesthesia on my podcast, if I remember correctly. Just veil thinning, dualistic. This is a sound. This is a sight. Or is it both? Just a lot of suggestive things happen to your psyche under the influence.
Yeah, and maybe, being on a soul-centric journey has something to do, I would think, with our connection with the planet we're on, and being the fact that we are made of the constituent parts of the planet. And perhaps you could have the viewpoint, we are the planet with eyes and ears and ideas and creativity. And that could be why the more we get into a digitized mindset, it seems to, which is also made of the planet.
Yeah.
But it sort of amplifies the mind more than the imagination, perhaps. And it's not turning on the aspects of our being that have been through million plus years of evolution, that is part of our spacesuit of being an animal. And that's part of this soul-centric journey, is being in touch with the earth and our sense. So it's like almost like it would make sense that psychedelic experiences that bring us back into an ecocentric mindset, or activities that do like hiking and walking and nature in general, serve as an antidote, because we're kind of de-digitizing our mind, or really just de-amplifying a mind-centric life. And every month or every year, we get deeper and deeper into that.
Mm-hmm.
And the malaise continues, and people's desire for something else, something deeper and bigger, grows and grows and grows. And that's part of that authenticity we were speaking that people are looking for. In a sense, there's an ecocentrism that they're hungry for, that I'm hungry for, because it's you. It's the part of you that is not being fed, and that is you.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I'm very, again, sympathetic to the sort of Gaia hypothesis idea, you know, the James Lovelock idea of, and you know, the Greeks had this idea that anima mundi, world spirit kind of idea. It is definitely compelling. I have definitely had experiences via psychedelics that do seem to be Gaian type of messages, for lack of a better term, you know, like, I mean, what percentage of people do you think have a kind of like, hey, dummy, you're fucking killing the planet kind of message or kind of download? And I've definitely had those. I had one experience in particular on a not a very strong mushroom dose that I started calling the cosmic yes. And the cosmic yes experience was a sort of, felt like a reminder that of what we're supposed to be. And it's very similar to what you said. It's like, hey, you got this level of freedom so that you could do the mission of life spreading. You're the only being that has the capability to take this off of this little ball in the middle of a, you know, cosmic wasteland, and put it on the next little ball and connect it, and put it on the next little ball and connect it. And that's what you're supposed to be doing. Like, we have one flower right now in a desert, in a frozen, absolute zero solar system desert, but you could make it connect to the next one and the next one and the next one, and you could spread the warmth and the love and the plants and the animals and the life. You know, it's like that. That's what it feels, and that's why I called it the cosmic yes, because it's like, are you going to embark on the great adventure of being with everything that comes with that, including more suffering? Let's be honest. Where there's life, there's also suffering. But do you say yes to it? And to me, I left that experience with a very big yes in my heart of like, fuck, this is the great work. Like, there's this idea of the occult great work, like the building of you know, monolithic structures and cathedrals and pyramids, and you know, these were like occultic great works. And it feels pretty clear that we don't have one of those as a civilization or a culture right now. And to me, that felt like the final one. Like, the final one is like, if you can spread it through the cosmos, that's the real great work. That's the real, you know, taking your soul and putting it outside of your body, which I think things like the pyramid, for instance, the pyramids were kind of supposed to be.
That's an interplanetary idea of our manifest destiny in a way.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would think there seems to be a design to, by the sheer distance of other things in the cosmos, it almost seems like it's obviously the case that you're meant to do stuff here. You know, it's like it's so impossible to even talk to anybody else like in the universe through traditional means, that it's like the real thresholds quickly become energetic and spiritual, or maybe that's maybe psychedelics are the technology for travel. I don't know, because rivets and rockets seem to be a dead end. Yes, we could potentially get to Mars, but it's like, and then what? You know, I mean, certainly not going to be going to Andromeda with these sorts of methods. So the thresholds of our technology of expansion of this manifest destiny you're describing perhaps have something to do with the heart. They have to do with feeling. Have to do with the mystery schools that have been explored for a long time, and isn't as much to do with the weapon of technology that we are so proud of right now. I don't know if we'll just keep smashing atoms and it's like, oh, and then we're going to find an even smaller particle and then we're going to know. And it's like, know what?
Yeah.
That things keep going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that process did lead us to the Higgs field, the God particle. And to me, man, like I don't even fully understand what was going on there, but what I do understand in and of itself is pretty goddamn miraculous. Like for instance, if you succeed, and they've done this in experiments from what I understand, if you succeed in creating like a true quantum vacuum of no particles, the Higgs field instantly kicks in and starts creating quantum particles. And because on the quantum level, again, from what I understand, everything is based off of in these particles, everything's based off of very subtle differences, like very small changes in mass and spin and whatever. And what determines that is this larger Higgs field, which is like just everywhere all the time. And it's, again, you can almost think of it like the fabric of that's holding everything together, So, I mean, in a way that to me could be a kind of spiritual revelation.
I don't know, man. It sounds like dark matter to me. Where they're just like,
yeah, that too.
There's this thing out there that's pretty much everything, and we're calling it dark matter. We don't know what it is. It's basically the thing that we don't know what it is, or we can't see it. We can't measure it other than its absence of something else. And some of it's just comical. But I mean, it's the fact that you have to build something bigger and bigger and bigger across multiple countries to see something smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like I could see that going on forever, Take some mushrooms and you quickly be like, oh yeah, that experiment would continue, I'm sure. As above, so below. But I love this idea of the cosmic yes. And I think that's a wonderful metaphor in itself. When we talked about metaphor being the mechanism of dealing with these things larger than the mind, for matters of the heart, for matters of the soul. So thank you for sharing that idea with us. The yes.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. And it's funny because at the very end of the trip, I started to think, well, maybe it's the cosmic no, because in Buddhism, the whole idea is to just stop. Stop with the worldly attachments, stop with the incarnations, stop with the desires, like just be done with it. That's the freedom. And then I left it feeling slightly conflicted, but I'm like, maybe I'll change my mind to the cosmic no when I get older. But right now, It feels like the cosmic yes is what I'm looking for.
It depends where you are in your life path. When you're an old man, you can be a cantankerous no. But two sides of a coin. It's at the end of the day, it's just sort of the cosmic falling in, the cosmic blossoming, and maybe it's just however you engage with it, it's happening. So it's just like what flavor helps you surf.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe I'm missing the point or something with the idea of physically building infrastructure in these places. And there really is something about our own consciousness that has the ability to do some kind of, psychonautic travel, as crazy as that sounds. But I mean, isn't that essentially what every ancient culture did with their sort of cosmo-theological
I would think, there's trying to expand, and like where we are now, I'd imagine that's always been going on. You'd think, right? To make sense of it all, and how do we travel? And perhaps they had more success than we do, because man, everywhere you look, people were finding ways to dive really deep, really deep into that inner space.
Yeah, but and at the same time, gain knowledge of outer space, like the Mayan calendar and the super long, accurate systems of astrological measurement and like, the fact that every single culture had an astrology. I mean, there's, there's Western psychology, or Western astrology, Eastern, it's clearly South American. Yeah, I that's a definitely a core curiosity is what is the Egyptians as well. I mean, every myth was like astro-theological, like the idea that the sun literally is the ark carrying the pantheon of the gods, and that's Osiris, and it's like that is part of their theological canon. And there's also this weird idea that I've run into many, many times reading about this stuff now. And it's the idea of like human souls and stars holding some kind of parity. Um, I'm sure you've possibly seen that at some point, like in like a lot of times, the idea of like a star falling is supposed to signify a death, or in various myths, a star is kind of born when a hero dies or something like that. I saw Jung in Jung's Red Book. He has some weird lines about how, if you fully individuate, you fully soul make, you sort of get to live in cosmic peace as a star and stuff like this. It's like, these are ideas that for some reason they've been around cross-culturally for forever, seemingly.
Well, the stars are a big deal, and for all of human existence, were the main show in town, and quite
True.
a show until really the Industrial Revolution, when we started getting electricity, staying up at night, and creating pollution and so forth. And so I think for a lot of us, we're not really recognizing how obvious and pervasive and massive that was forever. When I'm down in southern Utah, and we're at 7,000 feet in one of the darkest places in the United States, it really hits me every time I'm out there, especially on the moonless nights. It's just unreal. The Milky Way is just boom right there in front of you, and stars from horizon to horizon, and all, and the planets. That was that. How could that not play a major role of fascination and informing just what life is? So, nonetheless, I mean, I look at it just like a big dummy. Like, man, I just see a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, how would you ever figure out what's going on and the procession of things? And it's remarkable. It's really remarkable.
Have you tripped amongst that kind of a view? Because when I was in Peru, that was the best view of the stars I've ever seen. But we were not allowed to be outside of the Maloca area. This was an ayahuasca retreat, I should have said. But every time you would come out, and if it was a clear night, it was just like, whoa, just like the majesty of that view was there. And I would always think to myself, how crazy would this look if they would let me go outside for just like 5 minutes? How crazy would this look? Because I can't even imagine. And we know, that all of these indigenous cultures, for instance, had these alkaloids and they had this view. So I can only imagine the combination of the two must have been remarkably profound on the human mind.
Yeah. I would think eventually everything just starts to turn into, the visual field starts to really shift in a way that eyes open or closed. It all becomes this internal connection anyway. Yeah. But yeah, it's something that I would recommend to anyone if they can do it, is just try to do more stargazing or get to places where it's just very humbling. And so is places that are still wild. And usually those places have these elements go together. And it does something really wonderful to your head and to your heart. And I think it's linking you back to an experience that humans have had for so long. That's, you could add to the list of that which we're missing now. That is it's a food for us. It's a vitamin.
Yes. Yeah. The wonder vitamins are real, man. That is absolutely real. And that, again, I think is something that when we get into the minutia of our little digital realities and the numbers associated with those things, and the rumination and the repetition, we're being pulled further and further and further away from that expansive, slower, enraptured mindset. And there's research on this too, like similar to mindfulness, awe and wonder has a really profound effect on your brain and your mind and your sense of well-being and your sense of purpose. And it's funny because it's like all of these things, you can't point to why you do them or what the outcome is, but you do come out of the other side with a subjective sense of something good. You know, similar to what I said about how I leave a podcast. It's like if you expose yourself to that kind of an experience, to an awe-stoking experience where you get those wonder vitamins, it has a profound effect, man. And where do we go for that? You don't see them. You don't see the stars in the city. Like the best thing you're probably going to get is music or like a really riveting, moving movie or something like that. But
I know, isn't it funny that we're trying to do like VR as a mechanism of like doing just, I mean, there were times I was at Burning Man and I was like, you know, the coolest thing I saw was probably the moon on one of those nights or one of the rainbows. It was like, I mean, it was cooler and more fulfilling to me than any of the crazy art that I saw or human achievements. It's hard to top that. And it's a way to say yes, as you say, too. Yeah. I love that, man. I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate all these ideas, and maybe something about third eye drops is just about tickling that third eye, tickling the wonder, and it is a cosmic yes in itself to say, you know, be playful, go explore, find the yeses for you, find the things that awaken that part of your own mind and heart.
Yeah, and also, you know, again, admittedly, lifting from James Hillman a bit, he had a great riff. I think it was in one of his lectures. It might have been in a book as well. But sort of a riff on like, you know what, like fuck answers. Like we don't really need more answers. Like if you got great questions that you're constantly curious about and searching after and digging into, I would rather have that. And that's what I try to bring and at least sprinkle into people's minds, you know, a little bit on a weekly basis, hopefully, is like a little more curiosity, a little more,
Uncertainty brings wonder. Certainty brings closure.
100%, my friend. 100%.
I love it. Well, then we will end this by saying we don't know. We are uncertain. And we ended by saying yes to that.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
Yeah. Not I don't know, but I don't know. Yes.
I don't know. Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you're easy to find, but where's a good place to point people to?
thirdeyedrops.com on it's on the socials as well. On Instagram, it's at Third Eye Drops with underscores in between because I couldn't get it just the best way.
Some hippie already took that one, I guess.
Some other hippie got it before me.
Well, thank you, Michael Phillip. It's been wonderful to connect, and I look forward to doing it again.
Likewise, my man.
Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on and giving us your time and your thoughts. We love all those third eye drop thoughts. Check out his podcast if you get a chance, and hopefully he and I will get to cross paths in real life at some point, and certainly in the digital space again. This song that you're hearing in the background is Possible. And Possible is the first track off of my new studio album that is also called Possible. Every few weeks, I'll be releasing another track leading up to the full 11-track album in mid-July. We also have the vinyl available in a pre-order. That's all at eastforest.org if you'd like to check that out. And yeah, lots more coming. It's really excited to start the rollout on all this and just start sharing with you a lot of this work that's been happening in the background. Thank you again to our Patreon East Forest Council supporters and members. If you'd like to check that out and see about joining our East Forest Council exclusively on Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/eastforest. And thank you again for subscribing and reviewing and just being a listener and doing what you do on this planet Earth. We're going to keep doing it, all right? And thank you for being here. For now, though, keep walking that walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do it with grace.
And we close off our ears to all the lies we're told. I don't know how this ring will sound to me. I lay down my arms, open the possibilities. Could you let go? Could you let go? Could you let go? Could you let go? Stand on the edge. Love, choice, and chance, it's all an open sea. If you can let go of all these passages yet to be, consequences, broken fences, nothing left to sell. It is given, all forgiven, you can allow. Could you let go? 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 Open the door to the possibilities in this ground. Down to our knees to tend the garden of this sound. We can't know what will grow, winds will blow and break. But we stand on our feet and rise up to our feet. Could you let go? Could you let go? Could you let